Today I thought I'd do a lesson on modes, and a lot of times people teach modes as a scale, but there's a little more to it than that, and I want to show you what I'm talking about today. So let's just go right over to the camera guitar and talk about, I'm gonna have to bring my iPad with me, my little whiteboard here. So, welcome everybody. Also, I'm happy to do a Q&A later as well if there are some questions that come up for people. And I'm trying to remember how I have put, there we go, iPad secured. So, what the heck is a mode? And can anyone in the chat, if you know what a mode is, what's your definition? What do you think a mode is? I mean, I already hinted at it. There's a scale going on. But while I write a little bit here, I want to talk about the major scale, which I'll just show you my thing here. So the modes are based on the major scale formula, which is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And what that looks like on the guitar here is we've got any note you start on, and then a whole step is when you skip a note. So we just skipped F, right? So whole step, half step, whole step, let me scoot up, whole step, and then half step. And I just did that on the high E string so you can see what I'm talking about here. But let me map that out. E, F, G, sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp. So we don't have to do it linearly like that. We can start here and we go whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, right? That is a major scale. Now, I wrote it on my iPad like this. Not a super awesome way to do it. What I want to do instead is I want to just take the notes of the scale here. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we're back to 1. And what I want to show you is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So if we move in a circle, this is a kind of a helpful, fun way to think about modes. Now, a lot of people, when they first learn modes, they learn, okay, let's actually plop a C major scale in here, and I'll do something special if I can here. I'll pop the iPad up here. So if we put like a C chord here, or a C note here, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Here, I'll get rid of this. There we go. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. This is your typical C major scale. We will get into this, but we'll take it. Let's see. By the way, I asked for definitions earlier. What did I get? Kyle Wheeler says, using another note from the major scale as a focal center of your piece. Yeah, that's a fine way to look at it. So, let's turn that off. Let's get this back up here. So, if we start on C, and I know the circles are slightly different, but hopefully you get the same idea here. We got C, and then we got whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, right? So, like Kyle just said, if we pick a different note of the scale to start on, we have a mode. So a lot of people learn modes like this, and it's not a bad way to learn them. If I want to play a D Dorian scale, I can start on D, and I can use all the notes from a C major scale. The only problem is, now, well, it's not a problem, it's just, now we have different whole steps and half steps. So we got D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. And what a lovely sound. Lovely. But this doesn't really help us compare. And it turns out, oh, excuse me. It's like I've never used this stuff before. It turns out this typical way of learning modes, which I'll go through it a little bit more because it's a great starting point. It actually kind of misses the point of a lot of modes. There are major modes and minor modes, and there is Locrian, kind of the weirdo. And this is what I'm leading to here. So let's get back in here. So if we start on D, right, and we say D is the starting note for the Dorian scale here, then what actually is happening is we're going whole, half, whole, 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 half, whole. So actually a Dorian scale it's less about what note of the scale we're starting on, and it's more about the whole steps and half steps. If we go up to E here, and we say, okay, we're going to start here, and we're going to play a C scale, and we're going to say this is the root note, but we're still playing notes from a C major scale. So we've got half, whole, 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 half, whole, whole. Listen to how that sounds. Right, and a lot of people learn their modes this way. And let me just remove this root note, and you can think about this idea of, again, it's not a bad way to learn your modes. If you set out like a major scale and you say, okay, starting on the first note of that scale, that's a major scale. Starting on the second note of a major scale, that's a Dorian scale. Starting on the third note of a major scale, that's called a Phrygian scale, which I can write this out too. Starting on the fourth note of a major scale, that is called a Lydian scale. Starting on the fifth note of the scale, that is called a Mixolydian scale. Mixolydian is sounds like this. And then starting on the sixth note of the scale, we have the minor scale, also called Aeolian. I always think of mayonnaise. And then when we start on the seventh note of the scale, we have Locrian. And then we're back. So this is the way that a lot of people learn modes, and it's very problematic, because what people end up doing is they start saying things like, okay, I want to play a C Dorian scale. And it's like, okay, great. So now I lay out a C major scale, and now I'm going to play starting on D. And it's like, nope, actually, now if you start on D, whatever the root note of the scale is, you're playing a D Dorian scale. So what if you want to play a C Dorian scale? What do? We'll get to that. But first, what I want to do is I want to show you the modes in a different way. So let's go to the iPad for a second. This stuff here, if I just erase it all, and we, instead of putting actual notes in here, we just kind of do a little labeling here. So if we start here and we go through this circle of whole steps and half steps, we get the major scale. If we start here, we get a Dorian scale. If we start here, we get what's called a Phrygian scale. And if we start here, oh, you haven't been able to see my face this whole time. If we start here, we get what's called a Lydian scale. If we start here, we get what's called a Mixolydian scale. If we start here, we get just the minor scale, but it's also called Aeolian, A-E-O, Aeolian. And then this one is called Locrian. So, whoa, you'd think I'd be better at talking and writing words as a teacher, but nope, never gets easier. So these are the basic mode map, but this doesn't make this isn't really helpful. What do we do with this? Like, what do you do with this information? It doesn't seem like there's anything useful going on right now. So let's figure out how to make this useful, and also how to kind of categorize these modes better. So a better way, in my opinion, to think about modes is to think about major modes and minor modes. But before we do that, I want to make sure you understand a pretty basic concept, and that is the idea of a major scale and its relative minor. So let me know in the chat if this is a familiar concept to you. But let me put it this way to you. So we already talked about how a major scale formula is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. The minor scale formula is whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole, which, well, what? Let's do that together. So let's start on A this time. So let's just keep that root note here. So if we were to play an A major scale, we start on A and we go whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And if we were to play an A minor scale, we would go whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. I'll show you why this is relevant in a minute. But if you notice, if I put those notes in for an A minor scale, hang on a sec, those are all the same notes as a C major scale. And if we double check here, we put the root note over here. I didn't change any notes, I just changed the root note. If we put the root note here, we get whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And it turns out every minor scale fits in some major scale, and every major scale contains a minor scale without having to change any notes. In other words, I can build a C major scale and I can build an A minor scale using the same set of notes. What this also means, and this to me is where a lot of people miss how cool modes are, is if you've seen any of my other live streams especially, you'll know that I like to talk about chords in a key. And the chords in the key of, let's go to C major for a second again, just to really drive this point home. To build the chords in the key of C major, let me pull out the iPad again. The chords in the key of C major are, you basically play every other note starting on the first note of the scale until you get a chord, and that is the 1 chord in the key of C major is a C major chord. The 2 chord in the key of C major is a D minor chord. The 3 chord is an E minor chord. I'll show you, check this out. E, G, and B, that's an E minor. The 4 chord and 5 chord and 6 chord, we're going to just do all the chords here so that we don't have to keep putting the pencil down here, but check this out. We've got an F chord based on the 4th, 6th, and 1st note of the scale, a G chord based on the 5th, 7th, and 2nd note of the scale, and then we've got A minor, A, C, so those are all the chords in the key of C major. Now hang on a second. Remember how I said A minor shares all the same notes? Well, I guess that means it shares all the same chords, right? And it turns out, absolutely. If I rearrange this a little bit, I think it'll be worth it to rearrange just a little bit here. But check this out. These are all the chords in the key of C major. And if I just go A minor, good thing I'm going to edit this later, right? A minor, B, half diminished. Well, now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we're back to 1. These are all, A minor shares all the same chords with C major. I'll prove it to you. Check it out. We've got A, C, E. That's the 1 chord in the key of A minor. We've got B, D, F. That's the 2 chord in the key of A minor. C, E, G, the 3 chord. Because we have all the same notes going on, that means the key of C major and the key of A minor are the same, they're the same chords. So what do we do with this information? Well, you know how songs can be in minor keys and songs can be in major keys. For example, if I were to play, let me pop this back up. If I were to play the 1 chord and the 5 chord, we're kind of just goofing around in the key of A minor. And if I were to play the 1 chord and the 5 chord in the key of C major, well, that would sound like this. kind of making something up. But the idea here is modes are not just about playing scales. They're also about a set of chords you can mess around with. And this is why I laid this out earlier. So, have I enticed you to learn more about major modes and minor modes? I hope so. So check this out. If we look at, let's look at, I think I want to do this in the key of A major and A minor actually. So we're going to go back here and we're going to make an A major scale. A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. Right? Here's an A major scale. So, A major, we've got A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. Now, we know this is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Now, if we look at this chart, where did I put that? Over here. We've got major goes whole, play a note, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Well now, if we start on that same note, but we think about, okay, let's start here. Now we can go whole, whole, half, whole, whole, half, oh, I'm sorry, I'm counting it wrong. Let me show you on the guitar, it's a little easier. We're like this. We've got whole, whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole. That's what I just did. Starting here, whole, whole, half, whole, whole, half, half, whole. I don't know what's going on with my brain right now that I can't sing it, but I can definitely play it. I'm more of a guitar player than a singer. So in other words, what I'm trying to show you on this chart is the difference between a major scale and a Mixolydian scale. There's actually one note different. They both start out with whole, whole, half, whole, whole, but a major scale ends with whole, half, and a Mixolydian scale ends with half, whole. So what you end up with is basically a few different ways to think about a Mixolydian scale, which I'm going to shift some of this stuff around. This is the problem with doing stuff live. I'm picky about formatting, but then apparently not picky enough as I'm doing it, you know? So this is major. And then this right here, we were going to amend it like this to make it a Mixolydian scale. And I keep saying it weird. It's just Mixolydian. You don't have to say Mixolydian, but I'm trying to get it stuck in your head. So there's two ways to think about this. One way is to just say, okay, the major scale formula is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, and the Mixolydian scale is whole, whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole. That's a fine way to think about it. But a lot of people, musicians basically, they like to think of it as Mixolydian is like a major scale, but with a flat 7. And if you look over here, that is a Mixolydian scale. Instead of playing G sharp, I'm playing what would be a flat G sharp. It's just a G. So the difference between an A major scale and an A Mixolydian scale is one note. And part of the reason people call it a major mode is because the first, third, and fifth notes of that scale still give you a major chord. So if I throw this G in here, let's do blue. That right there is the note that we swap to make an A Mixolydian scale. Right? That's it. That's the difference. So now, what about Mixolydian? And part of the reason I wanted to format this a certain way is because I want this major scale in the middle, because I want to show you the the Lydian scale also only has one note different from a major scale. Lydian, well, let's look at this chart over here first. So the major scale formula is whole, whole, half. Whole, 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 half. Let's look at the Lydian scale. We start here and we go whole, 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 half, whole, whole, half. So this looks like it's got one note different as well. Check this out. Back over here, we've got whole, 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 half, whole, whole, half. So in this case, what we're doing is we are erasing this. We're replacing it with a half here and a whole here. Then we're turning this D into a D sharp. So what you could say is a Lydian scale compared to a major scale has a sharp 4. So what would that look like? That would look like yeah. So let's put that in pink. So the pink one here represents an A Lydian scale. And the blue one represents a Mixolydian scale. Cool, huh? So the cool thing about both of these scales is if you were to treat them as if they were a key, the one chord in that key would still be a major chord. So this is why we group them as major modes. And let's do the same thing with the minor key, and then maybe we'll write some music to kind of show how people tend to use this stuff. So for the minor modes, let me erase some crap that I have here. Okay, so for the minor modes, I'm going to do the same kind of thing. There's a pretty cool little, there's a cool little symmetry going on. So here, I'm going to use an A minor scale, and while I'm here, I'm going to actually clear my fingerboard. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. So whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. So this is the minor scale, also called A, E, O, like aioli. That's why I think of mayo. I figured it out. So let's go back to this little chart over here. Sorry to make anyone dizzy. So just like we saw, whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. That is the formula to make a minor scale. Let's check out Dorian here. This goes whole, half, whole, 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 half, whole. So again, we've got one note different. So I am going to copy this. I'm going to paste it. I forgot how to do it for a second. Paste like this. And this is now going to be Dorian mode. So Dorian mode is whole, half, whole, 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 half, whole. So we got to erase this little guy here and this guy here, and we swap these for whole and half. And so the result is Dorian mode is just like a major scale, but with a sharp 6th note. So let's see. I got a really cool question I'm going to answer later from Post Malone Elisa. Love that. Thank you. So, okay. So let's lay this out real quick. We got an A root note, and then we've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Or if you prefer closed. Oh man, fun. So now, the difference between an A minor scale and an A Dorian scale is one note. and that we'll put in blue again. Right? That's the difference. And because both of them start with A, C, and E in their scale, right? The C isn't changed, the E isn't changed. It's just that this F gets swapped for an F sharp. They both kind of count as minor modes, because if you were going to build a set of chords, which we'll do in a minute, if you were to build a set of chords based on one of these scales, the one chord, the chord based on the first, third, and fifth note, would still be a minor chord. So now let's check out Phrygian. What's going on with Phrygian? And I'm going to just quickly, I'm going to paste here first, and then we'll go look at the chart to see how do we fix this. And this would be a good thumbnail to be like, oh, he's wrong. I'm going to have to go to that part of the video and correct him. Because if you look at this, oh, you can't even see. Hang on a sec. I'm going to have to hide my face for a minute. If you look at this, right now, it's wrong. We got to fix it. What's wrong with it? So again, say it with me. The minor scale formula is whole, half, whole, half, whole. Let's check out Phrygian. Oh, it starts with a half. So we got half, whole, half, whole. Well, how different is that? Not that different, actually. It's just the difference between the first and second note. So check this out. Whoops. Oh, that's from a different lesson. Check that out later on my... I'm doing... Since this is a live stream, that's the melody morphs. I might as well show you. I accidentally clicked over there. This is a useful little PDF for how to make a melody and how to write a solo, which I'm doing a lesson about that on my Patreon right now. Just did lesson 2 and the homework for it. And if you want to learn how to play better solos, I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. Anyhow, accidental ad read. There you go. So we got that one note different. So what that means here is if we go to Phrygian, all we got to do is swap this and this. Instead of whole half, it's now half whole. And so that gives us a B flat. And what that means is a Phrygian scale is almost identical to a major scale, except that it has a flat 2. That's it. Unfortunately, I can't do flats and sharps simultaneously, so I might just do this and hit my little flats button and then show you this in pink. So here is an A minor scale. And here is an A Phrygian scale. Cool. So now, again, hopefully this is a more interesting way to look at the modes. And we're not talking about Locrian today. It's kind of its own cool thing. Part of why Locrian, part of why I don't want to talk about Locrian today is because it is the one chord that you would build based on Locrian is a diminished chord. So we don't often see music written in a Locrian key. Like you would with a Dorian key or something like that. So what I want to do here is I'm going to make a little chart. And I know this is a live stream. I did not prepare this chart. It's just going to feel right. And we're going to do a little bit of notepad stuff. So bear with me. But this will be really fun, I think. And I'll try to be quick. Whoa, excuse me. I almost dropped my iPad. So check this out. Let's use the key of A major first, and I'll show you some kind of basic things here. Now let's do A minor. Minor keys are always more fun. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So these are the chords in A minor. Pretty straightforward. Now, what about chords? Oh, excuse me, A minor. What about chords in a Dorian? Is it the same chords? Well, check this out. If we go like this, we make a little scale circle of our own here, which you can always do at home. You don't need fancy software. If you know the scale, you can make a little circle, and then as long as you remember to go to the right like this, everything's going to be fine. So, this is an A minor scale. This is the wrong button. This is the note we're going to change. So now we have an F sharp to compare. So does the 1 chord get affected? A, C, E. The 1 chord does not get affected. So the 1 chord in the key of Dorian, I don't know how I keep switching to green. There we go. The 1 chord is the same. Now let's look at the 2 chord. B, D, F sharp. Oh, it was B, D, F before, but now it's B, D, F sharp. So that means the 2 chord in Dorian is a B minor chord. Interesting. The 3 chord is C, E, G. Okay, that doesn't change. That's just a C chord. What about the 4 chord? Well, the 4 chord was D, F, A. It is now D, F sharp, and A. So the 4 chord in Dorian is a major chord. That's kind of cool. I also see a problem will arise if I don't move this down. So now, if we do this for the rest of the chords, E, G, B, that doesn't change. This was F, A, C, but is now F sharp, A, C, which means, let me write in E minor first. Now we've got an F sharp diminished chord, and then we have G, B, and D, which is unaffected. So, what the heck does this mean? What do we do? This is weird. Well, it means if we were to write a chord progression, let's say in like the key of A minor, and our chord progression was A minor, F, G, D minor, which would be 1, 6, 7, and 5. Well, that chord progression, ooh, that's too nice of a tone. So here, I'll pop my head back down here. Or, whoa, hi. So here, that's A minor, F, G, D minor. Well, that means this chord progression wouldn't really work in Dorian mode because we would have an F sharp diminished chord. We'd still have that G, but then we'd have a major chord. So starting on A minor, it would sound more like this. And I suppose it's probably more fun to see what I'm doing rather than just stare at the page, but it would sound like this instead. Weird. What do we do with that? Well, it turns out there are some chord progressions that sound really good in Dorian that you can't do in a major key. And one of those classic chord progressions is the chord progression for like I usually do it in a different key, but yeah. So A minor, C, G, D, which would be, what button am I pushing? This. Which, yeah, for those of you who are nerds in the chat, you know that you could probably do this in melodic minor as well. But this right here is a chord progression that works in Dorian mode and does not work in natural minor. And because F sharp is the only note affected, A minor does not have an F sharp, C does not have an F sharp, G does not have an F sharp, D minor does, so D minor becomes D. And this is a classic chord progression that sounds great. Right. So, now, Kyle brought up a great question, which is, couldn't you use chords from both since they're parallel, or as a borrowed chord? So, here's kind of what's wild, is a lot of modes, rather than just like purely staying in that mode, a lot of times what people do is they mainly stay in a major key or a minor key, and then they borrow the cool modal stuff that they like from the other chord progressions. So sometimes there's truly modal stuff that just stays in a mode. Like there's so much funk and soul that that is in Dorian mode. There's a lot of songs that are truly there, like the song "Good Times" by Chic, which is also Gangster's Paradise. Did I forget? Well, that's okay. But if you're thinking of like, right? Good times. These are the good times. I went too early. But that song just consists of E minor and A major, which would be in the key of E minor. It would be an A minor as the 4 chord, but in this case it's an A major, and that's because a major 4 chord is what you get in Dorian mode. Trying to figure out how I want to lay this out without making a 2-hour-long lesson. But a fun way to think about this is if we let's take A minor one more time here. Right? I could have copied and pasted, but I don't want to. And then we'll get into the major modes, which is also kind of cool. Phrygian mode has this weird thing where you end up with a B flat major chord. Like it's basically a 2 chord that is flat. So you get this cool thing where you have, you get chord progressions like this. And here's what I'm trying to say. When people think about the major modes, or the minor modes, any modes really, but we're talking about minor right at this moment, they think, okay, we're just generally in a minor key, and we aren't obligated to only play the chords from this scale. We can play other chords, but we're not playing random other chords. We're playing other chords that we stole from, here's a chord that we stole from Phrygian mode, right? And then over here, here's a chord that we stole from Dorian mode. And so sometimes you'll see a song that might have a major 4 chord like this, and it might also have this funky flat 2 chord from Phrygian. And you see this a lot in the major key as well. So I want to talk about that for a minute too, because if we go, okay, what are the chords in the key of A major? These are the chords in the key of A major. Let me just play them for you. Almost. There we go. So, the chords in the key of A major are A major, B minor, C sharp minor, D major, E major, F sharp minor, G sharp diminished, excuse me, and then we're back to A major. So you get cool little progressions, classic progressions like or right, that's just messing around with just this exact, not that. with this exact set of chords. We're just messing around. So with Mixolydian, remember, it basically is a major scale, but with a flat 7. So that means, in this case, that means we have a G instead of a G sharp. Well, that turns this chord right here. Here, I'll show you on the wheel. A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. So here, if instead of G sharp, we have now just a regular old G, well, that takes a chord that was G sharp, B, D, and it turns it into just G, B, and D. And this is probably one of the classic chords, one of the classic Mixolydian sounding chord progressions is when you write something that's like, oh, clearly we're just in the key of A major. I could even play like F sharp minor in there. So if we listen to this kind of chord progression, it's going to sound pretty familiar. We've got right. Well, if I were to play this afterward, G, F sharp, E, something like this, it's going to sound cool and it's going to sound nice because we're borrowing that G from Mixolydian mode without thinking, oh, I'm going to switch my whole thing to Mixolydian. It's just like, well, yeah, Mixolydian is a major mode. We're just going to steal a chord. So check it out, G. That G right there is kind of outside of the key of A major. Well, it is outside of the key of A major because A major, again, has a G sharp in it. But we're borrowing a chord from A Mixolydian just for a second. Kind of cool, huh? So when people talk about modes, and again, this is such a big topic that I don't think I can completely go into it, but I can sort of spend some time writing music and we can kind of talk about this stuff a little bit more. Especially one really interesting thing I want to talk to you about, actually. Okay, hang on. This is important. So, a lot of people think about 1, 4, 5 chord progressions, and it's like, right? You've got like La Bamba and all those kind of na 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 na, right? Or you know what? Well, some people call me the space cowboy. Yeah, those are all 1, 4, 5 progressions. But there's one song that people hear and they think it's a 1, 4, 5, but it's actually a Mixolydian chord progression. Because, check this out, in Mixolydian mode, which I should really label my stuff, huh? Let me hide my face. In Mixolydian, why can't I just use a pen? There we go. Mixolydian. Because of that G, well, E major in the key of E of A, it's an E major because it's E, G sharp, B. But in Mixolydian mode, this would be an E minor. And it turns out the song Louie Louie by, was it the Kingsmen, I think, is a 1, 4, 5 in Mixolydian. And it has a minor 5 chord. And that sounds like this. Check out the difference. Right. Oh, baby said we gotta go. Yeah. Right? So that is sort of the trick. Now, we got a question here. I mean, we got a bunch of questions, but we got a good one here. Talia Ryan says, how do you recommend memorizing these? So here's the deal. That's Wild Thing also. Well, Wild Thing is major, I think. Compare yourself. But Talia, your question is important. So important, we got to go to Guitar Church. So, Talia, great question. How do I memorize all this stuff? Well, first of all, I got a question for you. Why do you want to memorize this stuff? What's the point of memorizing this stuff? Imagine if I told you that before you could speak any English, you have to memorize the dictionary. That wouldn't make sense, right? Hopefully you agree. The goal of the dictionary is to increase your vocabulary when needed, or to figure out a word that you don't know. To insist that someone memorize the entire dictionary before they speak their mind, before they speak English, would be kind of a wild thing to think about, right? What we really want to think about instead is, why would the dictionary even be useful? In other words, rather than thinking, I need to memorize the dictionary before I speak English, you think, I need to start speaking my mind and getting my thoughts out into the world. And when I get stuck, when I can't figure out how to say what I want or how I feel or what I need or communicate with other people, that's when I pull out the dictionary to find a word that helps me express myself, right? You don't do it the other way around. It's the same with music theory. You don't study all the music theory and try to get all the music theory down and then go, okay, now I'm going to write music. Now I'm going to express myself. That is backwards. If I sound mad, I'm not. I'm just passionate. The best way to memorize music theory is to start by memorizing what's actually useful to you. And so for me, that would be memorize the chords in the major key or the chords in the minor key and practice putting them together and making music, using them to actually do stuff that sounds good to you and that's fun. And once you hit a wall, once you go, I feel like there's more sounds that I need to express myself, then that's when you study more. And then it'll be easier to memorize that stuff because it's stuff you actively want to use right then, because you're pent up, you're frustrated that you can't express yourself better. So this is what I'm trying to say. Don't do it backwards. Don't start by trying to memorize a bunch of music theory stuff. Start by trying to make music. Start by trying to express yourself. Start by getting yourself in a position where you feel like, I'm stuck and I don't know what to do. And I know I could be better at something. Then that's when you start studying the music theory. And if you want to, come check out my school. That's mainly what I try to do, is I try to give you the tools you need to express yourself better. I've got music theory courses. I've got Caged Basics, helps you get to know the fingerboard better. I've got melody making stuff. I've got weekly writing prompts. Basically, I call it community challenges. It's my patrons get to participate together toward a common goal of writing something. You know, the other week it was write something spooky. It might just be as simple as write something in the key of E minor, or write something using Dorian mode, or something like that. And the idea is you just practice writing music. And it's through writing music that you discover those music theory concepts that you want to get to know better. And that's going to help them stick in your head because you're actively trying to use them. So consider that. That's my pitch. Thank you. So now, let's write some music. Yeah. Lauren Wise says, my Patreon is awesome. Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate that. There's a lot going on. I've been working on it for over 5 years now, and I'm pretty proud of it. So, I say we write some music. How's that sound? I'm going to do it. But in order to do that, I got to quit something. And let me know if you get any weird background crackliness while I set this up. In the meantime, though, I'm having fun. I hope you're all having fun. And Talia or Talia, I hope that made sense to you. Let me know if it doesn't. I just think so many people are doing it backwards. They're trying to memorize all the stuff they can. So, True S Armor, good point. Says, yeah, but I still don't know what modes are for. Modes are basically more creative outlets, more ways to get more chords. That's the way I like to think of it. And if I need to write this out a little bit better, I can. So another fun way to think about, okay, so some people say, I'm still trying to understand it. So this is cool. This is fine. So maybe I will spend a little bit more time on it then, and that's totally cool. But basically, modes are for getting more expressive, interesting keys, more expressive, interesting scales, and for making chord progression writing and music writing more fun, more interesting, with more options. That's basically it. So, if we're talking about the, let's go back here for a second. So if these are the chords in the key of A minor, and these are the chords in A Dorian, maybe I will write a piece of music comparing the two. That sounds kind of fun. And I could do that pretty quickly by using a keyboard. That's fun. Let's try this. First of all, let me get some kind of a drum beat going. For those of you who don't know, this is my, oh, I forgot. Every time I open Logic Pro, this is my MIDI controller. And my camera is kind of freaking out right now. It's very bright. And I can use this to trigger sounds in my recording software, which is what I'm going to do right now. And I'm going to hit record. I'm going to do a little slower tempo, something around here. Let's see. Yeah. I like that second pass. We're going to do this and this. And I think what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to go up here for a minute. We're going to look at this top-down angle. Oh, I got to turn that camera on. Let's see. And surprise keyboard. Wow, that's fun. So here's just kind of another angle, a different way to think about everything we've been talking about. Here is an A, right? If I play an A minor scale versus an A Dorian scale, almost identical except for one note. Well, what I love about keyboard is, compared to guitar, there's a very visual way of seeing the chords in a key. So if I play every other note of the scale, starting with this minor scale, I can play the chords in the key by going A minor, A minor, B diminished, because we've got an F in A minor, and we've got C major, D minor, I burped, E minor, F major, then we've got G major, I have to drop down an octave, and then we're back to A minor. Well, if we compare that to the chords we would get using this F sharp, we still have A minor, now we have B minor, we still have C major, now instead of D minor, we have D major, and then we still have E minor, and then instead of F major, we have F sharp diminished, then we've got G major still, and then we're back to A minor. So that one note ends up changing basically every other chord. So if I were to play like a chord progression like, let's see, if I were to play a chord progression like this, well, that's completely unaffected by that note, because I'm avoiding all of the chords that use F or F sharp. But if I were to play a chord progression like this, and I go. Which sounds awesome. That would be just using this minor key. Which, that sounds great. But now, what if I did that in Dorian mode instead? Well, that would sound like this. That's kind of cool. Just a different sound. It's a major chord instead of a minor chord there. And we could label those, or we could just look at it linearly on this keyboard like this. However you look at it, basically, modes just give us access to some different flavors. And this to me, oh, how anticlimactic. Is a different flavor that I like. Even though I played it a little out of time. Compare that again to the minor key, which I can grab some notes and flat it. So this is back to A minor. Still cool. It's just different options, different choices. And it's the same with the other modes. We just get different options for chord progressions. Kind of like that Kingsman song I was talking about earlier. What the? Oh, I guess my heater kicked on for the first time in this room, which is, I don't need more heat in here, but hey. So, let's just make some music. Let's map out, let's try this in a new key to see if you can understand the kind of stuff I'm talking about here, okay? And modes are such a weird topic, but as long as you remember that in the same sense that you've got a major chord and its relative minor that use all the same notes, but when you treat a different one, oh, now I'm sharp. Basically, sorry, I got distracted by that comment. I wanted to make sure my audio is good because sometimes it gets crackly. But, lost my train of thought. What I'm trying to say is modes are just different scale options, and scales give you a set of chords. So if you have a different set of chords to work with, your music is going to sound different. It's kind of fun. So let's do this with the key of E minor. And then I'll write something in the key of E minor, which will be fun because I don't usually write in that key. So here is an E minor. We'll start with the scale, okay? E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E. These are the notes in the scale. Now, if we were going to use Dorian mode, then we would just sharp the 6th note of the scale. And if we were going to use Phrygian, we would just flat the 2nd note of the scale. So this is E minor scale. And then if we just turned that C into a C sharp, it would be a Dorian scale. If we turn this F sharp into an F, it would be a Phrygian scale. And so what does that do to the chords? Well, let's do the scale circle. E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D. So here are the standard chords in the key of E minor. And I'm going to just arrange them a little bit better. It's always, there we go. It's always hard to make sure I got the right amount of room here. I wrote that one too small. D. There we go. Those are the chords in the key. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm gradually getting hotter and hotter in here. That's how it goes. So, these are the chords because we just take every other note of the scale, just like we did on the guitar camera, right? But if we were in Phrygian mode and this was just an F and not an F sharp, which I'll put in red to be like, hey, this is a different one. Well then, instead of an F sharp diminished chord, we would just have an F major chord, which would just be a different flavor. And if we used this C sharp instead of C for Dorian mode, that would give us an A major chord here, which would also just be a different flavor. So let's write some chord progressions and see if we can write some chord progressions that just feel good in a major key. Something like E minor, G. Let's see, what do we want to do? Let's do E minor, G, A minor, and B minor, right? This is a pretty straightforward chord progression. And I'm going to plug into my recording software real quick. You're going to hear a clunky sound. And I'm going to get this cable out of the way. Okay, so this is the chord progression I'm aiming for. So we've got E minor, G, A minor, B minor. That sounds nice. This is just normal E minor, key of E minor. So let's hit record. And I'm going to go. I don't like this tone. Oh, I think it's because my guitar is turned way down. That's better. Now I'm going to turn it down a little bit, but at least it sounds better. So, E minor, G, A minor, B minor. Cool. Okay. So that is just your typical, that's just a standard chord progression. And if we want to put Roman numerals on it, which always represent chords, that would just be a 1, 3, 4, 5 chord progression. So now, because the 4 chord is based on the 4th, 6th, and 1st note of the scale, it's usually A, C, and E. But if we were to convert this chord progression to a Dorian mode chord progression, that would be an A major instead of an A minor. So if we play that same chord progression and we swap that A minor for an A major, let's see how that sounds. And you tell me in the chat which one you like better. So we're swapping that A minor for an A major. I'll play the A minor first. E minor, G, A minor, B minor, A minor. So let's try A major. That's kind of fun. It's just a different flavor. It sounds nice. Maybe I want to write a bass line to this just for fun. First, though, I think I'm going to add some nice keys. So I'm not a keyboard player, so I'm going to keep it pretty simple. Something like that. Here, I'll show you. Scoot that out of the way. So I'm just playing E minor, G, A major, A, C sharp, E, B, D, F sharp. That's it. And I don't know what kind of rhythm I want to do. I'm going to keep it simple. That's fine. That's a nice little loop. Now, I'm going to play that while I get the bass set up here. And then we'll jam on the scale in a minute to show you kind of what's going on with that. Oh yeah, I forgot. These things need to be plugged in so that you can hear them. There we go. Plugged in, unplugged, and plugged in. Oh, I guess I just found out one of my cables has an issue. Let's try this. I forgot what I was doing. That bass is way too loud. Let me turn it down a little bit. And then I'll think of I'll try to come up with a little interesting bass line here. Let's see. It's still way too loud. I really want to hear the drums. So I'm going to turn it down too much, and then I'll mix it back up where I think it should be. I liked my previous bass line. I like the previous bass line better, but I'm just kind of riffing on a concept here. So this bass tone is garbage to me. I really don't like it, but that's okay. We've got a little groove now, so let's look at, what am I looking at here? The heat's getting to me. I'm getting hot, getting overheated. So, let me do a little mixing real quick here. Let's make this sound a little better. This beat sounds pretty good, but let's get everything. I'm gonna throw a little limiter on this guitar. So, I think what's gonna happen is my computer is gonna crash, but I'm gonna do this anyway. And, oh, I can already tell. Ah! I'm telling you, the heat's getting to me. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna fire the camera guitar back up. You, in the chat, you're gonna let me know if you start hearing some crackling. And if you do, then maybe this won't work, but let's try it. What's the worst that could happen? I'll just have to turn that software back off. But we're gonna pop over here to the camera guitar. Now I'm gonna show you, after I take a few sips of this icy beverage, so after I take a few sips of this icy beverage, we're gonna listen to this track, and we're gonna compare the minor scale to the Dorian scale, and we're gonna see which one sounds good on this track, and why. And I think I'm gonna turn the track down just a little bit because it's loud. That's a good volume, I think. So let's first just map out the key. There we go. This is an E minor scale, which means we should be able to just kind of jam out, except because of that A major chord, we want to avoid a C, and I'll show you why. If I play a C over this, like what the C is gonna sound really bad over that A major chord because A major contains a C sharp. So if we listen, suddenly it sounds good. I'm actually just gonna isolate that A major chord. That's the chord. So if we go, or sorry. No, we got to avoid that C and play C sharp. And that's because we wrote a chord progression in Dorian mode. So if we want to jam on this song, especially this chord, then we got to use Dorian mode as the scale that we improvise with as well. Does that make sense? So now we should be able to jam out to this little thing we just wrote. So here we go. Check this out. And I see a question I'll get to in a minute. Oh. I should play higher up here. Let's see. I'm just kind of goofing around. So, from here, it's hot enough. Okay. It's hot enough that I might have to just take a few questions. And while I am looking for questions for a second here, why don't we all just see if we can wake up someone who's been hiding in the background this whole time. Let's see. Betty, do you want to show your face to the world? Oh, have you been having a good nap? Yeah? You don't like making music? This is Betty. She's great. Just had to check on her. Okay, so let me just sift through some questions here because I've been in teaching mode. I see a question from Steven who says, does anyone know how to start creating simple phrases when soloing? Yeah, so okay. So I've got lessons that I'm working on Patreon right now that are all about soloing, but I also have some lessons on phrasing on YouTube right now. It's called How to Solo on Guitar Part 1, I think, phrasing. And it's a great starting point for thinking about how to start soloing. It's also how I like to write melodies, and I have a little melody writing series on my Patreon that you might like as well. Let's see. So True S Armor says, how before you think people should start, or like how soon before you think people should start introducing a new instrument to round themselves out? I think that's what you're asking. Like, how soon should I learn a new instrument to round myself out? Really, True S, the answer to that is, it's sort of like any new instrument you learn helps you understand music, and that's always a good thing. So it couldn't hurt to learn a new instrument now, but if it's going to take away from you getting kind of the fundamental grasp of your current instrument and you have limited time, like if you're trying to learn how to play a basic song and now you have to divide your limited practice time between two instruments, I would wait. But if you've got all the time in the world and you want to work on two instruments at a time, go for it as soon as possible because it's really fun. Let's see. Ches, oh, before I started writing, you said, how about writing some 50s songs? Well, that's not usually how I write, but yeah. Okay, we didn't get a lot of questions today. Oh, True S, so the relative minor in minor would be the major one. Sort of. True S. In the minor key, which now I just unplugged everything. Hang on a sec. Let's get this out of here. So, if you're in the major key, C major, the relative minor starting note is the sixth note of a major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? So then you've got... But it works out that the starting note for the major key, once you're in the minor key, is the third note of the minor scale. So in other words, the third note of a minor scale starts its relative major, and the sixth note of a major scale starts its relative minor. Okay, so let's see. By the way, everybody, I just want to say modes are a heavy topic, and it's important to think of them as a scale, but it's important to remember that what you use a scale for is to build a set of chords and to write melodies. And so when we say a mode is a scale, we don't just mean it's a scale to play. We mean it's the fundamental building blocks of a key, which would be chords and melodies and bass lines and all that stuff. And music theory gets weird because people borrow stuff from other keys, and there's all sorts of funky, weird rules, which you can honestly learn about a lot of that stuff on my Patreon. I think even learning the idea of like secondary dominance and harmonic and melodic minor can create such a strong foundation for understanding how keys work. And that's what I teach in a course called Music Theory for Guitar 2, which I really spent a lot of time trying to make that course as clear and detailed and understandable as possible. And I think you'd really like it if you like this kind of lesson. So, let's see. Okay, cool. We got some good questions here. So, Steven says, if you have 45 minutes and you're just starting to learn how to solo, how would you divide your practice routine? Well, assuming soloing is the only thing you're learning how to do, Steven, I would basically divide up my routine into a few minutes of warm-up. So I would put a backing track on. And I would just kind of warm up my fingers, maybe with some pentatonic scales or maybe some major or minor scales, and just sort of get my fingers warmed up. Then I might play, depending on what you're doing, I would divide my practice time into different things. I would practice writing phrases. I would practice doing dynamics, where I would practice playing softer and louder. And I might practice like some kind of funky, slidey, bendy, other kind of stuff, but mainly I would want you to think specifically about what your goals are for becoming, to learning how to solo. Like, do you want to play with other people? Do you want to be able to solo with anyone, or are there specific songs that you want to be able to solo on? I would set some really specific goals and think about how can I achieve those specific goals. Because if you're just learning how to solo, there's still a lot more questions you could ask to help sort of get your practice time into a more specific route than just learning how to solo. True S Armor says, practice routine for beginners. Oh boy, we got to go back to church for this. Okay, so True S Armor says, practice routine for beginners. I get this a lot. In fact, my patrons know that when someone asks this question, they all go, ooh, because here's the problem. Imagine if you told me, hey, Scott, I want to be a painter. And I went, oh, cool. And then you say, what should I do, right? I want to be a painter. What should I do? And so I go, okay, well, buy some, let's go buy some brushes. And then you go, I don't want to use brushes. Okay. Well, let's go, oh, you don't want to use brushes. Like, do you want to do watercolor? No. You want to use oil paints? Oh. Well, are you trying to do like graffiti paint? No. Oh, what kind of painting do you want to do? Like, get specific. And if you were like, oh, what I mean when I say I want to learn how to paint is that I want to learn how to paint cars. And it's like, oh, well, that's a really specific kind of painting. So what do you think you should do if you want to learn how to paint cars, right? There's a whole set of steps involved in learning how to paint cars specifically. But if you just start out saying, I just generally want to learn how to paint, there's almost too much general stuff going on there for you to get specific about any particular thing to do. So I don't give beginners a practice routine. I have beginners set their specific goals, what they want to learn, what inspires them, what makes them interested in guitar. And often, for beginners, it's a set of songs that they want to learn, or it's a specific skill that they want to be able to do. And then from there, I can only really give you what to practice based on what your goals are. I don't believe in just generally playing guitar. I think you have to play guitar for reasons that are personal to you to reach goals that are your specific goals. If you were a complete, absolute beginner who hasn't touched a guitar before, I would say, okay, I guess if you want to be able to play scales, practice some very basic scales. If you want to be able to play chords, start learning a few chords. But from there, we got to get specific, right? So that's that. Yeah, Post Malone Elisa says 5 hours a day, 3 hours maintenance. I mean, it depends on what you want to play. I don't even play guitar that much. Steven says, what days do you live stream on YouTube? 7 p.m. Pacific time on Wednesdays. And then I also do a live Q&A on Patreon every Thursday that goes as long as it has to go. And then I also do regular posting on Patreon. Yeah. So let's see. I thought I saw some other questions in there. Hang on, I can just scroll over here. Kyle Wheeler says, can't you also use secondary dominants to pull you to the key change when not wanting to make a diatonic song? Yeah, I mean, secondary dominants typically pull you back into the key, but they pull you to a different chord in the key, which is something we could talk about another time, but that's kind of fun. Do you have any other questions for me out there? Otherwise, I might just call it a day. Yeah, okay. Well, let's see. This has been fun. Oh, True S Armor says also how to write your first song. You don't set out to write one song first. You start by writing little blips, little napkin things. You start by going, what chords do I like that sound good together? Oh, that's kind of nice. Okay. So what I just did there was I just developed a little idea. Did I write a song? No, but I used some tools. I did repeat with changes. I did this first. And then I went, what if I repeat that whole thing, but I changed the chord the second time through? And that right there is how you start writing something. And that right there is just a little idea. I don't have a melody, but what you do is you collect 10 or 15 of those little things, and then you go, oh, I think I'm gonna try to come up with a melody on one of those little things. And in a way, True S, you can't be too precious about your first song. In fact, I would say start writing 10 songs right now. Just start writing 10 songs. And maybe one of them you'll start making some progress on, and you'll start learning, oh, this is making more sense. Don't be precious about it. Don't think about breaking the seal of the first song. You got to think of it as practicing trying to write bits of music that slowly develop into bigger things. So let's see, Paul K, one more question and then I'll get out of here. Hey Scott, regarding writing melodies, if you're using A-B-A-B pattern, would ending on the fifth interval on the end of AC pattern be a way to resolve, or what's a good suggestion? Instead of thinking of, if you're thinking of the fifth interval of the key, that is entirely irrelevant, because writing a melody, you tend to want to write a melody to a chord progression. So let's see. If I were to write na 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 na, oh, let's see. If you wanted to end on the fifth interval, I'll come up with a little progression. Na 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 na. Right, that would be an A-B pattern. So if I do that twice, na 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 So I see that you want like an AC pattern in there, but the only reason that melody works is because of the chords I'm playing. I'm starting on, in this case, I'm starting on the root note of the 1 chord, and I'm actually playing the 1 chord. Na, 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 and then I'm ending my little phrase on the 3rd of that chord, and then I just happen to be playing the root note of, but I could easily go na, 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 right? And that is just the 3rd of the 4 chord. But the important thing is that I'm ending my phrase on a note that's part of the chord happening at that time. In other words, if I'm singing the root and the 3rd of the 1 chord, na, 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 but I'm not playing the 1 chord, it's gonna sound weird. Check it out. Na, 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 na. It doesn't make sense. Your melodies are always about paying attention to the chords happening at that time. Na, 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 na. All I'm doing is thinking about how can I accent a note in the chord that's happening right now. Root, 3rd, root, 3rd, 3rd, 5th, root. I'm singing the roots, 3rds, 5ths of the chord that's happening now. Whatever chord's happening while I'm singing, those are the notes that I'm accenting. Paul. Hopefully that makes sense. And also, that should give you actually a little bit of freedom, because it's not, it doesn't have to be that rigid, but that's just a quick way to think about it. Anyhow, I am going to get out of here, and thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. This was a long one. Sheesh. I'll see you all next time, and yeah, we really worked on a tough topic tonight, and I didn't want this to be like a 3-hour lesson, but if you feel like you need to understand the basics of this stuff a little bit more, especially when it comes to modes, I really think if you join my Patreon and you learn those foundational concepts, modes will start making a lot more sense. But hopefully this gives you some good stuff to chew on. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye. Farewell. Oh yeah, I forgot. This is a long outro. Check out my Patreon. I think you'll really like it.